Executive Committee to order. Roll call, please. Jean, is your hand all right? It's flopping around on the table.
My right hand.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Mr. Samuelson.
Here.
Mr. Benson.
Here.
Mrs. Labuda.
Here.
Ms. Vedder.
Here.
Mr. Ruiz.
Here.
Mrs. Geiger.
Here.
Mrs. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Steingart.
Here.
Mr. Sorensen.
Okay. Thank you. Josh has nothing for us today. Sam, nothing from you. Okay. We have a couple of discussion items here. Couple of things that were started last month that are being brought forward. We'll start with the tax cert discussion. As I understand it, now we are investigating looking for appraisers to start identifying. Can you bring us up to speed, you and Ira, perhaps?
If you look at the list, you see some very large numbers, but determining whether those tax certs are viable or defensible, we thought it made more sense to at least get a preliminary appraisal on some of those properties so that we would be able to assess whether it made good sense to get involved and spend the money to defend those. So the first, Ira and I thought that the first, and Nancy, sorry, that the first effort should be to find some appraisers who could do some very preliminary
Sorensen in.
appraisal work. Can I represent accurately, Ira?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that was.
Ira, did you have something to add to?
Well, the one thing Sam brought out before, and I think the reason it's on again today, there's an expense dollars. So I think we need to have some authorization, some guidelines to know, we have an idea, having met with a couple of times. Some of the ones we think we need to be involved in, but they're progressing along, and so we need to get started on one or two of them. And,
Would there be a cost sharing with the?
Oh,
it
yeah?
would be. At the meeting with the town of Thompson, the superintendent of schools was there and was extremely supportive, which hasn't happened in the past. And, yeah, unfortunately, right after that, he was leaving actually. But,
It's easy for him.
but it was, it was the right decision because they have 60% of the impact of whatever happens. And the town obviously is supportive, so there will be a sharing. I don't know if it's gonna be pro rata, 60-20-20, if it's gonna be a third. I'm not sure that was discussed yet.
So is there a number that we should be expecting? That we
Sam,
should
you had a
be?
number in mind.
I thought the last meeting you said between 15 and 20,000, wasn't it?
I thought so.
Not per property.
No, for the whole.
We're gonna look at this on a case-by-case basis, right? 'Cause I have a feeling I know which property you're talking about. I think we need to use judgment even before we send for appraisal. The property's in contract to be sold.
Well, that one we know,
And,
but there are some others that are
no,
very
I'm
big.
just saying, for example,
I
I'm
know
using
that
this as an
one.
example, not
Yeah.
as a specific, is when there's a property that's already in contract, there's no sense even spending money on the appraisal, especially when the assessed value is double of what the value is, where they're gonna wind up losing the lawsuit no matter what.
Well, without getting into names of something like that, remember, tax certs look backward, not forward. If there's a sale that's consummated, then the assessor factors that sale, whether it's arm's length and all the rest going
Not-
forward.
They rarely go by the sale price. The assessed value is usually, more often than not, higher than the sales price, number one. Number two, like Sam said, it goes backwards, so these matters are gonna be litigated one way or the other, and there will be a monetary impact regardless of the sale.
No, I understand that, but
Waste.
when something is, listen, and.
No, I understand your
when-
point.
When one is so
That's why we want an
grossly out of
appraisal.
line, and you know there's gonna be an adjustment no matter what,
That's
why, and if, I think we have to be careful before we
Absolutely.
spend thousands of
We
dollars.
would not recommend going forward to do anything that is gonna be wasteful, but there are some other properties in the county. Big numbers. As we sit here, we have no idea whether those numbers, big numbers requested for discount, for a reduction. We have no idea whether that makes sense or it doesn't make sense. I wrote to 2 appraisers before this meeting, who are out-of-county appraisers, I've worked with before on commercial. Ira has names as well, but we can't retain anybody unless the board gives us authority to do so.
Well, I have 2 guidelines I'd like to see. One is that you make a determination on the cost sharing. 60-20-20 sounds reasonable to me. I don't know what that would actually add
That'll
up to.
change in every, may change in every town and every school
Obviously,
board.
but I'm just saying a general guideline, and
Right.
the other one would be that you would have some sort of not to exceed order, because if it turns out that it's a preliminary appraisal and you have to go back for a more,
What we propose to do, we get preliminary appraisals, we would then come back to this board and say, for this year, we would like to get involved in these 2, 3, however many matters. We would give you rough cost estimates as to what that would be, and you would authorize us to get involved in particular matters. We're not gonna get involved in matters on our own.
well, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that at some point we get a sense of the ballpark of it, because if you're gonna be coming back for set, more in depth, is this all gonna be submitted so that it's, going to be a budget modification in the 2014 budget, or, cause it's too late for it to come out on Monday's tentative budget, right?
I think they'd be incurring expenses.
Could be in-
Or-
could be in the final.
Oh, before the end of this year.
I imagine you'd be looking to spend some money this year. I think.
Yeah, could be in the final.
Does Sam, do you have any extra money in your budget now?
Yeah, right.
Just a question.
Uh,
I was hopeful.
No, I appreciate it, I didn't mean
He
to be
seems to
facetious.
find money
Exactly.
when he needs
I didn't mean to be
it.
facetious, but part of the problem with my budget is, at the beginning of the year, we can't project a long trial or things like that, so we're winding up by this time of the year, really on bended knee at certain points from some of our accounts.
So we actually have to do a resolution to allow you up to, let's say, 20,000, would that be fair, or 15,000,
15,
what, I think the last
You
time
said
we said,
15 to
yeah,
20,000, so we could,
just not to exceed,
not to exceed.
The odds are, Kathy, that we won't get involved in your typical residential dwelling,
Good.
although in some of the bigger developments, we might. But, normally we can get one of those for $300 to $500. But when you're talking about commercial,
right,
they're gonna cost a little more.
So can you have that resolution prepared? I would suggest that if it's timely, we will be having this special board meeting on the 7th. If we want to have a resolution prepared for then, that would be fine with me.
so,
Okay,
Was this
anybody
a
else?
tax cert policy or something?
No, it's the specifics on this.
I know.
Authorization to engage.
Because I have the
Authorization
list
for
it in the
expenditures.
meeting notice, so I wanna make sure I have the wording correct.
Authorization to engage an assessor, or an appraiser rather.
An appraiser.
About,
For tax certs?
For tax.
Yes.
Specific ones, not
Why
general.
don't, instead of appraiser, just say, use the word professionals, that'll cover
Okay.
appraiser.
Got it.
We need somebody special, an engineer and attorney.
What?
You need
Engage
don't
in
use
professional
Just write
services.
professional. Professional.
Real estate professional.
Why don't you put professional
Professional services.
Professional services.
Okay.
Okay?
Cover again.
Okay, so we'll have that and we can address that at that meeting. We'll
Specific
move it up a little bit.
tax.
Before we move on to the next, to the delinquent fees, I wanted to take an opportunity. Yesterday, we had the first meeting of the Board of Ethics. They met to do some of their organization. What I would like to say is I think we have a really great team of people. They're very committed to doing this. They're very serious about it. I think we've got a good group. So I would like to introduce them to you. There's 3 of them are here right now, so I would like to introduce them. First of all, the gentleman who has agreed to chair the committee is John Conoval.
Aye.
Thank you again, John. And we all know and love Ken Walter. And representing the county on the board is Monica Farquhar Brennan.
Esquire
Whatever.
Junior,
No, that's enough
the
names.
third.
Okay. Monica. Okay. There are 2 more people that are serving on that board. One is Judith Goldberg, and the other one is Keith Gilmore. Again, they were all here yesterday. They all met each other. They're sharing information. And once again, on behalf of the whole board, we want to thank you for taking this on. It's not going to be easy. It may not be easy all the time. So we appreciate it, thank
We
you.
hope it's gonna be easy.
We do too, absolutely.
You did the hard digging in the first round of writing the ethics law, and now the implementation will test it.
That's right. You got it.
If everyone's ethical, you'll have a fine, easy job.
Right. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is again, another item that has long been talked about in on this board, the delinquent fees for haulers in solid waste. We have been meeting, at this point in time, there's a significant amount of money that is outstanding to the county in waste hauler fees. We had, at two different periods of time, had asked the treasurer to start working on some negotiations or agreements to get these people caught up. It seems to not be working as well as we would like it to be, so we need to go back and address the whole process. We did meet and started talking about the solid waste user fees, or the solid waste rules. And I would like to ask Cheryl to jump in at this point and kind of go over the suggestions that came out of that meeting.
I don't need to sit
Yeah,
there.
sit here for the microphone.
I understand that Scott distributed the memo and the supporting documents that came from the original hauler account meeting that we held. And the good news is, in preparing for a meeting, you get to reread some of the rules and the code, and you have a clear understanding of what's involved. So I think our rules, for the most part, are in pretty good shape. I think they address most of the hauler issues. We'll get into the details of the abusers of the system. But generally speaking, the rules seem to be pretty up to date. But as we talked about in the meeting, there were a couple of things. Ira had raised an issue regarding the $25,000 figure in the rules. There doesn't seem to be a current reason why that has to stay, the $25,000
Maximum?
the limit over the maximum. Ed, of course, weighed in, and he didn't see a problem with asking that they be removed, either that figure be removed. Because as it works today, and jump in if I say this incorrectly, when you have the account aging report, from 0 to 30 days is it's like the snapshot on any given day of what somebody may owe, but they may not even know that they owe it because they get billed at the end of the month. So it's like if you had a credit card and somebody said on October 7th, what do you owe? On October 12th, what do you owe? So that just tells you kind of what's outstanding. After that 30-day period, and we'll use October, on October 31, a statement is generated, give or take a day. So the hauler will get the bill in the first few days of the next month. The rules currently provide 45 days for the hauler to pay the statement. So if they owe $20,000 as of October 31, they have 45 days to pay that $20,000. As we all understand, the population swells in the summer. So the haulers are tipping, utilizing our services like 4 times as much, 5 times as much perhaps, maybe 4 times as much as they do during the rest of the year. So of course you're gonna see a huge increase in the amount that's owed to the county, especially in the 0 to 30 days and even the 30 to 60 days. Usually by this time of the year, those accounts should, and the summer swelling as it were, and the cost attributed to that, should be reduced back to a regular amount. The way the rules read, it permits more than that 45 days where they have to pay, the person has to pay within 45 days. It also permits another $25,000 max over that. I can't tell you why the rules say it, but it doesn't seem to move the ball forward. It doesn't seem to be meaningful in any way. So if we reduce this maximum amount and we still just expect people to pay us within 45 days of receiving a bill, it doesn't seem like it's
I mean,
anything.
You're almost talking 75 days.
It
That-
is 75 days.
From the time they get a bill until the time they have to pay.
Till
it.
it's
No, so from the time they get the bill, we'll say at the end of the 30th day, but they don't know what they owe until they get the bill. So in theory, you tip on October 1, you get your bill on October 31
Okay. And now you have 45 days to pay that.
from that.
Right.
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 Let me just, can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
One of the changes we talked about is language. It's, I think, a little more than just semantics. I think it's meaningful, so. A hauler gets a bill every time he goes to the landfill, he or she. At the end of the month, they get a statement, so that language change will be reflected. So they get a monthly statement, even though they're billed daily. We could, you know, at the end of the month, a person in my office sends out a statement indicating what the month's bills total were.
Yeah, but their bookkeeper should understand that. If
They
they're
should.
if they're getting a bill every time they tip, the bookkeeper at their,
Listen, that's why we're here, because this shouldn't happen.
Right,
But
I mean,
it-
that's the bottom
That
line
is the
to
bottom
me.
line.
When I get my oil tanks filled,
Cora's
the guy
next.
turns around and he gives me the bill for my oil tanks. The company sends me a statement after that, but I can pay it right then and there if I wanna write out a check. So to be allowed all this extra time, they're banking on our dime.
It's I think the way I don't know if you wanna speak before I answer that. The way the rules were written was to reflect the business aspect of running the landfill, period. I may dump every day, I may go twice a month. I may owe you $8,000 by the middle of the month and not owe you anything more. And when I get my statement, like a credit card, if you use your Visa card to pay your Macy's, you know, to go to Macy's, you know when you go to Macy's, you owe that $25. But it's not until you get your Visa card that you go to pay that full
Right.
amount.
well,
So I don't think it's,
unfortunately, unlike a credit card, we can't charge interest,
we do
We
charge
don't.
We do
interest.
charge
It's in the
interest.
rules
Yeah,
and
but
we do charge interest.
not 29%.
Well, that's true. You can make that amendment to the rules, I'm not gonna
I mean,
offer it up.
if they're gonna be 75 days late, we should
Well,
get something out of it.
All right, so that's one aspect of it. Ira was trying to point out that every time someone utilizes the facilities, they do get the invoice, we'll call it the bill.
Right.
But we're gonna change, we'd like to have the rules changed to say, to reflect the statement at the end of the month. If this group believes that 45 days is too long to permit someone to pay a bill, to pay a statement, that is that's a dialogue you can have, and you can choose to amend the rules. But we weren't, the group at least that met, felt that the 45 days, it wasn't a big thing for us. It's really up for you to decide on a policy level, do you want it payable in 30 days, 15 days, whatever it is.
Okay, Charlotte. Cora?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that at one time, there used to be a county employee there on site, and there were fewer days in arrears when that employee was there. So, what you're looking at is not only are you trying to make the amount that's owed less to the county, but you also don't want to start incurring more
Yes.
fees due. So within the rules, can there be provision for putting this mechanism in place so that there is an employee there?
Oh, I won't talk to the employee part of that because our solid waste director was John Kellenbeck, and I think that's who you're alluding to. There are people at the landfill currently. There are people that still, Kim Hogue, I think, is our employee.
Well, it's my
up at the
understanding that at
landfill.
one time this wasn't a problem because it was controlled at the
Yes, there was
Thank
more
you.
direct
Right.
control.
Ira?
That person was a victim, if I may say so, of budget cuts that happened 2 or 3 years ago, when a lot of people were laid off, and there was some consolidation. I hate to say this, but yes, there was less money owed when the employee was there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there was less money owed because the employee was there.
Okay.
So the person in my office that now does the same job is
Mhm.
not at the landfill,
Mhm.
but is in constant contact with DPW,
Mhm.
people at the landfill, and
Mhm.
performs the same function.
No, John was much more
John was-
broad-based
No,
than.
I wasn't talking about John, I was talking about
But
No,
I
that's who
think
was,
that's what
but that's who was
Laura's
dealing
Or
with
is
it.
it for-
I'm
Or is
referring-
referring to
I'm
John.
referring
No,
to the fact
I'm
that
talking
we're,
about,
No, I know what you're
The
saying.
account clerk.
But I
Oh,
think
no,
what
Cor-
I'm
Cora's,
talking about John Callenbeck.
Cora's referring to, we had the director of
Yeah,
salaries
that's
sitting
different.
right there at, in the scale
Right, right.
house was
And
where
that's-
his office was, and he had
Right, right.
contact with Paul.
there is really,
and
as I
so what
understand it,
happened
Ed,
then?
there's no director of,
Yeah, that was
Landfill.
a position that wasn't eliminated.
since
We're-
John left, we don't have a director.
Okay,
And the other thing I would say to answer your question, the answer is, I don't think the rules can provide for that. I think it's up to you to put the money in the budget to create the position.
And to, no,
Created.
that position has been created, we
Okay.
have it advertised right
Right.
now,
Okay.
we're going to
Right.
hopefully
Right,
be
we-
interviewing people, so
Okay.
we will
That's how
be
it is.
setting that back
We
in
did that 2
that
months ago.
position.
So that
So
means
that is
that
underway.
we will at least be, not in the same position next year with constant, arrears.
we don't really know that for
That's
sure,
the
but
intent.
That's the
there's a,
intent.
there
We will
could,
have somebody
there's a
that
possibility.
oversees the
Right,
process.
now that we have a full list of people to go, Ira is next, then Cindy.
I think
Okay.
we need to get to the crux of the problem. The bottom line is, it's not the 75 days, because if everybody was at 75 days, we would be having this conversation. We need to, yet, we're between a rock and a hard place. We don't wanna force any haulers to go elsewhere. I think what we need to do is come up with, like a business. They have limits on what they can go to. There's limits on time.
That's the change that's being made. We're eliminating the credit.
Right.
They have 45 days, everybody will be treated equally, and that's it. The credit is
But
zero.
there's
It's gonna
one
be
more
zero.
thing that you may wanna add
that
in,
right, Cheryl?
based
I'm
on
not
the
sure.
business.
Hold on.
Certain businesses have a better ability for cash flow because they're larger. You can have a small place that all of a sudden is gonna bring in 10 times what they can pay no matter what. Different businesses have a bit different cash flow and ability to play. So if we treat all of them the same, that may be a problem. A small guy may not be able to carry a $500,000 bill, where a bigger guy could.
I just wanna address that. The rules are,
Hold on, Sam.
are across the board. The rules are the rules are the rules, right? You can't have rules for this type of person, rules for that. We have our rules, and our rules are in pretty good shape. We were just talking about that $25,000 limit. How you treat the haulers, and this goes back to what I said initially, when I was initially asked to be involved. Historically, the director of solid waste would allow the haulers the June, July, August, and through almost October, because by October, a lot of them kind of caught up, because they wouldn't get paid until September, and then they would pay us. It's, the few matters that are out of hand, we will absolutely address them, but we wanted to just talk about the rules first.
Right.
I don't think the rules need to be changed. I think we have to address with people who abuse the rules, the haulers that abuse the rules. But I think most of the haulers, we're very fortunate that most of these people, they pay as soon as they can, and they're within the 60-day period, right, soup to nuts. And they pay up. And if you look at the account aging reports, you can see that. 0 to 30 is X, 31 to 60 is Y. And then after you get over the 60 days, even within the 60 days, since they have 75 days, a lot of these people still pay. So it's really just the abusers, and I don't know that you want to amend rules that seem to work okay for most people to address the extreme. I think there's ways to address the extreme, but I don't think amending the rules would accomplish that. With regard to a human being, the director of solid waste, here is the benefit, and this is only in retrospect, you look at it. He had daily, regular involvement with these haulers. So you know as well as I do, if there's a human being there and that person knows that you owe money, they'll still let you do what you need to do, but they're gonna nudge you. And if they nudge you, you'll pay. So, so he had a good rapport with the haulers. He knew what he had to do, and I'm just referring to the one person I work with, whomever this person will be. It will certainly be helpful. My instinct is, like everything else in life, someone who's either taking advantage or in over their head, that person's not gonna make or break that situation, but I think it will help in keeping the system running smoothly.
Okay, Sam?
One other number you have to know, that is presently in the rules, and that is 105 days. That's the deadline which the rules presently provide. If you're not current at 105 days, you can't tip at all. That's presently in the rule.
Listed as 105, or it's just the
No, it's the
accumulation
30
of each of
days
the?
after the 45
So
days
30
after
days
the
after
30
the
days.
45.
So it all
It's
totals
always
up to
4 months.
105 before
It's
they
over
shut it
105.
down.
That's 20 days short of 4 months.
Yeah, you have 45 days to pay after you get the statement, and if you don't pay within another 30 days, it's kind of like curing a default. You can't come in.
But this is the time
Hold
of
on,
year when
Carl.
people.
That's
are
how your
much-
rules presently are written.
Cindy?
Just so that I'm clear, how many haulers are we talking about? Because it's, I see here on the, account aging report, it looks like 8 haulers in arrears for 800,000.
Those are the specific, those are the circumstances I'm hoping that we can address separately from the rules. But the account aging report that I think you guys got, I don't know how many haulers we have. Does anybody know?
No, it's in the packet. I didn't
Whatever the
have
I'm
it.
just wondering, because if you look at the resolution from January of 2013, you did, raise that, max charge limit of 25,000 for 3 licensed haulers that were in arrears, so
Yeah, I
are we
don't know.
over and above that now?
I wasn't part of that, that would be, I guess Ed and Ira handle that. I was not involved in, I don't know what they did.
Okay, it was attached to here, that's why I wondered.
That's
So
the,
you're referring to the settlement
Okay.
agreement.
Kitty?
I have a couple of pieces of concern here with this. First of all, it's going out 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Interest-free, it appears.
no.
It's
there's
not
interest
interest
charge.
charge. There is an interest
Wait,
charge.
does the interest?
It's not 29%, but it's.
Okay, but does the interest incrementally go up once you go past the 30 days, or it's a flat interest?
My understanding is, it's 1% per month for every month that the amount is out, or the percentage of the month. So I guess it's a total of 12% a year, right? If you don't pay, it'd be 12%.
Well, I think maybe we need to increase that. That's the first piece. The second piece has to do with just having a guy in the place doesn't necessarily, as Iris says, one doesn't lead to the other.
Excuse me,
When the
Sam?
tipping thing
Speak with you.
happens, it happens, you get a bill right then and there. They know what they owe, right then and there. They can accumulate their $5 bill, $500 bill, $5,000 bill. Every time they tip, they know at the end of the month, they're gonna be due about 25,000 or whatever the number is. Because they get a daily slip when they tip. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the statement I get happens at the end, but just having the guy in the room, you still have somebody giving them that bill. So that, having a new person in the room, I don't see is necessarily going to make that difference. My concern is that they're getting, when I get my charge card bill, or my property tax bill, or whatever bill I get, I have to pay it by such and such to not accrue any interest. And if I go past that, I'm accruing it at this rate, and then it's gonna jump much higher, which would encourage me to find the money and pay it, not go a quarter of the year with it unpaid. I think that's where our problem is, because they're going a quarter of the year unpaid, so they're not building up their own reserve. And it's not like they just entered the business and they finally found out that in the summertime they have more business. They've known that for years.
I'm not defending any hauler, believe me, I am not. And if you were at the meetings, you'd understand this. But my response to that is, maybe 90+% of your haulers aren't in this position. Maybe 95% of the haulers aren't in this position. My instinct is, the situation that the county is in now is as a result of the either unfortunate situation with haulers or the bad behavior of haulers. And I wouldn't necessarily lump everybody into this exceptional situation. It's a big ticket number. It's a big number that we're owed. But I'm looking at this account and, aging report. Does anybody know how many people tip at how many licensed haulers we have? It looks like maybe 50. And maybe we're talking about 5 or
8, I think it's $800,000.
But as you said, the rule is the rule is the rule.
Right. Can
There
I,
is a
And we'll get-
what I,
collection
hold on, what I would
process.
like to do is, in the interest of time here and getting something done, there are certain things that Cheryl has outlined to amend the rules. I'd like to get through that at this point, and we can continue this after that point, but I think she's 100% right about having the rules that do work for most people and just confirming what they are and then abiding by them. Alan?
I think we need to make a concerted effort to enforce the rules.
That's exactly right.
First and foremost, and those haulers that are currently in arrears, I would give them 60 days to get their act together and get those arrears paid, and then from this point, and anything that's happening from this point forward, they have to be remain current on. But you gotta draw the line somewhere, and like it or not, we're in the landfill, solid waste business, and I can't imagine ESRI or any of the other landfill operations allowing things to get to this point. They would be turning trucks away. And, you know, these are big businesses, they understand, you know, they've been in business a lot of years, they know what their business model is, they know the fluctuation in the seasons. And you know, the last thing I wanna do is start paying collection companies to go after this and paying them 20 or 30%, because if we get to that point, we're gonna end up losing tens, or we're gonna be paying out tens for hundreds of thousands of dollars in collection fees, and just enforce the rules.
Okay. Cindy?
We do have a collection process. I'm just wondering how far that's been taken, because if you have 40, 50 haulers and 8 are in arrears, then it seems like the process should be carried forward to those 8, so it's not, like you say, jeopardizing, you know, the whole.
Okay.
Have we gone anywhere with that?
Hold on 1 second. If we want to get into the specifics of some of this, we would need to go into an executive session, because we're going to get too far into it to have it
Okay,
as a
so
public
thi-
discussion.
Then let me just rephrase. This document here, as far as, you know, revised and updated synopsis, is this, as far as the collection process, is this the same process that we had before?
I want to be clear on my memo. The updated synopsis of the meeting was only because Ira had asked about the billing versus the statement change, and I had forgotten to put that in the memo. I only attended one meeting, and this was the discussion that was held at that meeting. I am not involved in the hauler accounts as we speak. It's just the bird's eye view. This was also an outline of discussion items for us to bring to the whole board the issue as it presently exists. There's no resolution before you, there's anything. It's for us to discuss the rules generally, and then I would ask that we go into an executive session to discuss potential litigation against abusers. Having said that, when you're done with your discussion and whatever the outcome is, perhaps next month we'll have a resolution to amend the rules, if you agree on the proposed amendments, or to not amend the rules, or to litigate, or to not litigate, or to authorize, or to not authorize. And so this was just a discussion item to kind of bring you up to speed that it's been brought to our attention, there's an abuse, and you guys are in a good position to address it.
Okay, Ira and then Cora.
Thank you. I want to make a brief general statement that I hope will respond to Kitty, Alan, and Cindy. We had this meeting because of the changes that were made over the last couple of years, and the tone of the meeting was to, as Cheryl said, most of the rules work, some don't. The tone of the meeting was to get tougher, to put an end to all of this, so that it doesn't happen again in the future, and to make sure that the rules get tweaked in a way that is necessary. Cheryl's memo of October 3rd, which may not have gone to all of you, but if you have it now, really outlines what we
October
talked
8th.
about.
October 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just,
Okay. There's changes here which will re-empower the commissioner. There's changes here that'll get the county attorney and the commissioner more involved in the collection process, Cindy.
Okay.
And the changes we've discussed. If you guys wanna talk about this and get tougher, Kitty, and that one, and that's totally up to you. What we tried to keep in mind, and that's is why this is very difficult, and I mentioned this before when we talked about the installment agreement. We don't want to, our agreement with the person that hauls the solid waste to another facility, we're required to have a minimum amount every year. We barely made it this year. We don't wanna lose tonnage. We don't wanna drive, particularly our big haulers, out of the county. On the other hand, we don't want them to take advantage of us, so we tried to keep that balance. And like I said, so if you guys wanna talk about other things that are stricter, so to speak, that's fine, we don't have a problem.
I think maybe it
Okay.
might be the time to.
All right, Cora, and
It's
then
just
I think we'll probably should go into an
Yeah.
executive session to get
Well,
the details.
before we get into an
So we
executive
could wait
session, the
and get
statement that I want on the public record very quickly is that we're now in the middle of October. We had this discussion a year ago around the same time, heading into the budget discussions. And I really don't think that, we can wait for another cycle, because this is the time when the haulers have the cash from their peak season. So what's our time frame on getting this, done and dusted?
My answer to that would be whenever you're ready. The suggestions that we talked about that are outlined in Charles' memo, I think, are reasonable, and as soon as you're ready to adopt them, I think that would be helpful. If you wanna then talk about other changes, we can do that.
Well, it's not so much the rules as the enforcement of what we know, because
Well,
we
that
don't wanna
was-
be in this
Of what is
situation in a
currently
year.
our
That was part of what we
situation.
talked about.
Okay.
Pardon?
That was part of what we discussed.
Right.
And we can talk about that as pending litigation.
Okay,
and
let
if you
me
want.
ask this.
Can we-
This is obviously gonna take a little bit longer. Kathy has a concern, and I agree with her. We have a bunch of things that we need to get done here, so perhaps we can go through the rest of the agenda, and then we can return to this, and if we go to executive session, we're not wasting everybody's time.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on. If, the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks, I think, Gene, that's
Yeah,
an issue that you wanted to address, and that shouldn't take very long, right?
No,
Okay.
not long at all.
Okay.
I already gave the information to my fellow legislators. Cornell University and a group called Go Rail is doing a study on bridges and roads in New York State and how they're affected by these double and triple tractor trailers. There are figures in their report about the bridge and the rest of the infrastructure in New York State, how this would help save that. The only thing they're asking us to do, if we decide to participate in this, is to provide them with information. Cornell University and Go Rail is paying for all of this. All they want us to do is provide the information. They will plug it all together and come back to us with their numbers and what they found for Sullivan County.
What information do they want from us?
It's
Well, I understand this
It
is
was in the
information
box.
that
I gave it
was-
to everybody.
that-
I gave Ed a copy, I believe.
Well, for DPW, because from what I understand, Gene, is that, there's a proposal to increase the size and capacity of trucks, so you're gonna have more road damage, and who's gonna mitigate the road damage?
Right.
So they want Sullivan County to get involved, get the data to them on, current road damage versus what could be, and the
Right.
costs, and.
So it's strictly information that we need to give to them
I
to
thought
be
they
a part
wanted us
of
to pass
this.
a resolution. I saw those trucks are way too big for
It's,
the.
we're preparing.
The resolution thing is something totally different. That was a different group. Go Rail were people I met up at NISAC. And they came up with this study in cooperation with Cornell University. And again, it's not gonna cost us any money, other than the time and effort of Ed's people to get them that information.
I think it's smart to
Okay.
plan ahead.
Kitty?
That was my question. Who were we expecting to gather the information?
He's
and
sitting
the
right behind
time?
you,
Do you have a time
smiling
yet?
Is it on
waving.
now? It was,
Well,
no.
a lot of,
it was
we do road assessment every year, we do bridge assessment every year, so some of
current
what
data.
they would be looking for, we would just be able to give you
Right.
a
Right.
summary of our RSMS, which is done with a Cornell Local Road Program, the RSMS program. And Dave Cable, or I know from Cornell Local Roads, is one of the key people on that. So we could provide them information about our road system, the mileage, the length, our bridge conditions. We have all that on file, and that would be minimal effort to put that in. If they wanted us to do projections of what impacts would result from heavier truck traffic, that would be a lot more work. We don't have the truck data for percentage of trucks over roads, and to go through and calculate on the axle loads on roads and bridges, that would take extensive work. What we can provide though isn't as
And
important.
And that's what they're
I
asking.
believe Cornell would do those projections for us once we gave them the basic information.
So the basic information, you already have that data.
Yeah,
It's just a
there are-
matter of sharing
Pulling
it
it
with
out, right.
Cornell.
That's correct.
Jonathan?
Well, with Go Rail and Cornell.
Jonathan?
I think we should, if it's minimal, participate in the study, but the reality is these trucks are not driving on county roads, they're gonna be driving on the interstate. And if we're gonna enhance our tourism industry, I think we need to oppose this from a safety and traveling through our county, not on our roads. I mean, you're not gonna have triple trailers going down county
No,
roads.
triples probably not, but they also have, I think it's 97,000 pounds now for
Right.
6-axle trucks. I mean, those are the ones, and in New York, you have a reasonable access, I think, like 5 miles off an interstate that they can pull off and drive, so you'd
I
have it
think we need
along the
to
17
continue to oppose
corridor.
this from the virtue of,
Yes,
we don't
please.
want triple trailers and super heavy trucks
Mhm.
driving on the, we all wanted the interstate for commerce, not for safety concerns.
Well, and I believe that would be in the future. Right now, it's just in the study stages.
Yeah, I mean, because it's the future 86, we don't have
That's their problem.
one of those
Okay.
roads right now.
So ultimately, we're all in agreement that Ed can provide the limited amount of information that we discussed, and get it to whoever we need to get it to.
And again, I put the information they wanted in everybody's box a week ago, over a week ago.
Okay. Anything else on this? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Gene. Resolutions. Number 1 is to establish a standard workday for elected
Move it.
officials. Second, Cora. Any discussion?
Yes, I would love to, have a standard work day.
There's no such thing.
8
An
to 4,
elected
5 days a
official.
week.
Okay, anything realistic? Because that's not gonna happen.
Saturdays and Sundays, evenings.
25 hours.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Mine's it.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, authorized contract with Rottenberg Healthcare Consulting.
Motion.
Gene, second. Alan, discussion?
Yes,
Go ahead.
this contracting consulting firm, this was RFP'd,
Yes.
about, prior to the HEAL grant? This has to do with the HEAL grant?
It has to do with the HEAL grant in that what we want to study is what the potential is for the ACC after the HEAL grant renovations.
I have
That's what
another,
I thought, and I wanted to clarify that.
Mhm.
So this is after the HEAL grant,
It's not after, they can do the work now from what is
they can
proposed to be
look at a
done.
projection about
Correct.
dealing with the nursing home.
Mhm. Yep.
And we RFP'd that to start with.
Mhm.
And this was the group that we found was the winning bid.
Do you wanna explain that,
Qualified.
Josh? How it worked?
The vendor is a sub currently of our existing vendor that does Tosky, that does the countywide audit. The vendor that you have in your resolution didn't actually respond directly to the RFP, the parent company did at a much higher rate. We had talked to this group separately prior to even the RFP going out. And we asked them why they didn't respond, and they basically said because our parent company was responding. So we then talked to them, and they agreed to honor a quote that they had given us even before the RFP had gone out. So they didn't directly respond, but their parent company did. But we've had subsequent conversations to try to get the cost down to some manageable number.
And if you notice also, Kitty, on there, it is up to $20,000. It isn't necessary, it isn't 20, it's between 15 and 20.
My next piece of that question, the nursing home, the build was not for a short-term rehab, the build was for an Alzheimer's unit. Would that stay as included, or would this just be an authorization for a potential sale as anything.
This has
No, this is-
nothing to do with a sale.
This-
Okay, I'm just trying to
Nothing
clarify.
to do with the sale.
This is simply gonna give you a financial projection of how, what the finances are gonna look like for the nursing home post the Hill grant for a 5-year to 10-year period.
And that's part of the RFP, is that they're projecting out that many years?
Yeah, I don't recall, I think it's 5, but we can ask them to push those. Yeah, it becomes hard when you're dealing with the federal and state
Right.
government to kinda have any kind of meaningful projection beyond a 3 to 5-year period, and even that's somewhat difficult. But they're gonna be analyzing and incorporating some of the Affordable Care Act issues in managed care and other various factors that are on the horizon, so they'll be looking at existing legislation as it exists today and project out kind of how that will impact the facility.
Not having seen the RFP itself, it'd be nice if at the end of their report, they have options and recommendations. If you go with option A, this is what you'll expect. B, this is what to expect. C, this is what to
I don't
expect.
think we're asking for options
not?
at this point. We just wanna know what is the finances of the facility post the renovation with the fewer beds that we're gonna have, the new rates we're gonna have because we invested in capital infrastructure, and the addition of a unit that we didn't previously run that we are going to. So it's
Well,
just gonna
then-
give you the data then to say, okay, now we need to decide based on those numbers, what are
we're
our
gonna do.
options?
What
Well,
is the
that's why I
reality?
want
Well, I think-
these people to lay out some options, because since even before I was a legislator and I came in and I heard the private, public, and not-for-profit options, at what point are we gonna keep kicking this can down the road without looking at those options?
Well, I think
It wasn't included, but we could potentially ask them just as and maybe an appendix or something, just to give a sampling of what's going on across the state, not necessarily specific to our county, but maybe they can give us what Ulster's done, what Orange is in the process of doing, and there's a handful of upstate counties that are either in the process of selling or looking at selling currently, or looking at other models, so we could probably ask them to give us just a sampling or a chart of what other counties are doing today or have done in the near
I
past.
have one more question. Randy, have you or Deborah DeJesus had input into this particulars of the RFP?
Not to the particulars, no.
So what input did
The
you have?
RFP was sent to them before it was issued.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Mine's it.
Okay. Number 3 is to set a public hearing on November 7, 2013 at 9:30 a.m. to transfer deed to Cornell Cooperative
Move it.
Extension.
Second.
Okay,
I just,
discussion, go ahead.
I thought that we were going to have a meeting prior to.
To
Is
what?
that-
It's just a
date.
public hearing, though, correct?
No, this is just a public hearing. We originally were going to have this meeting on the 7th, on the 31st.
Yes.
But it was the noticing that we didn't have the time to notice. We needed 10 days out for Annie to get the notice to the papers to get it out in time. So we had to move it to the 7th.
Okay.
So this is the meeting that you're talking about that was supposed to take place on the 31st.
So it's setting a public hearing for November 7th, but in the meantime, I still have some questions about the particulars,
Well,
the
you
specifics
have,
of the transfer,
you've got
so-
2 weeks
okay.
to
Well,
ask
you're
the
gonna have a
questions.
special meeting on the 7th, too.
And then,
Yes.
well, that will be to move them forward, right, with
Right.
resolutions. But
both the
you will have
hearing-
the next 2 weeks to have you ask your questions.
The hearing and the meeting will
And the special
occur.
meeting will happen on the same day, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
But can I just ask that
Mine's
question
it.
again? We are gonna vote on it that day, on the 7th.
There will be a
After.
resolution prepared and we would be able to vote on it on
After
that
the
day.
discussion.
After the
After
public
the
hearing.
public hearing.
There's gonna be a
Right.
few things on November 7th, Cindy, on the agenda.
Right, I
We
understand.
got the list.
Okay, number 4, reclassify position in the treasurer's
Move it.
office. Okay. Jean and Kathy, any discussion?
I think this is just for the funding, it's not to
Maybe Ira can explain. He's
reclassify
here.
it, I believe.
We already-
Legislature's not approving the reclassification, they're approving the funding portion of it.
And the classification, what I have a question on, is that classification look like the one from,
Legislature doesn't
from a
approve
one to a two?
reclassification.
Tax clerk 2 to a tax clerk 1?
2 to 1.
So is that a move up in the position or
downgrade
down?
and a lower salary.
Okay.
Ouch.
It's because of we lost, somebody gave us notice a couple weeks ago that they were leaving, they've gone now, they've gone for a week. When I became the county treasurer almost 8 years ago, I had inherited 6 tax claims. We've been working the last few years with 3. One's a supervisor, one's an accountant, one's a 1, and one's a 2.
That's a
The
good
senior,
thing.
the senior one left. We lost one. He was at a lower grade a couple of years ago with some of the layoffs. And we're looking to get her back at the lower position. Eventually, sometime next year, we want to ask Carolyn to schedule a test for the higher grade because the duties require the higher grade. But in the meantime, this person will do what she previously did. But we need to get someone in there. We're down to 2 people.
Wow.
And we're foreclosing, we're sending out notices. I think I told you last week, everyone in the office is working on this, and it's just a very, we just need to replace that person. And we're gonna replace her temporarily with a lower grade.
Okay,
Thank you.
any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
9-0.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, to approve a Sullivan County revolving loan.
Motion.
Jean, second Alan. Any discussion?
I just wanted to know what type of company it is.
Jill's behind me.
Jill?
It's a small business located out of Mountaindale. She makes her own sofrito, which is a Hispanic
Food
spicy
processing?
sauce, food processing, where her major competition is Goya, and she sells in local stores like ShopRite,
It's
and
good
is
stuff.
looking to expand and distribute to larger distribution.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
9-0.
Okay, thank you. Number 6, ratify memorandum of agreement between the County of Sullivan and New York State Nurses Association
Move it.
authorizing county manager to execute said agreement. Kathy, Cora, any discussion? Just vote.
I'm just glad we've settled another contract.
Okay.
It's a great thing.
All in favor? Opposed? You had something to ask?
Yeah,
Well, okay.
being a former
9-0.
member
You're
of the
recusing
NAS, I
yourself.
think I need to recuse myself from this.
8-0.
You're a former member.
Right,
Yeah.
but it just,
Appearance.
See the conflict.
Okay, thank you, Kitty.
Yeah.
Number 7, set a public hearing on November 7, 2013 at 9:35 to transfer Apollo property to Sullivan County Funding Corporation. Okay, Alan, Kathy, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
9-0.
Okay, thank you. Number 8, extend the full-time temporary account clerk database position in the early care program at the Public Health Services.
Motion.
Motion,
Second.
Jean, second, Kathy. Any discussion?
I just wanna make sure that it's understood that this is a temporary
Right.
position.
It's the extension of the temporary position.
And normally I'm not voting for any more positions, but recognizing it as a temporary position, I'm in favor of it.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's backbilling, it's money
Well,
that has to
the
be
work has to
paid
get
back.
done, otherwise we lose money.
Yeah, it's.
Otherwise, we lose money. This is.
Okay,
it
all in
has to be-
favor? Opposed?
9-0.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to public comment. Yes?
I have to, the college has a meeting at 4 o'clock, so I'm gonna be there, and I won't be able to say anything before, or listen to what's gonna be said on the, on tax cap. I think part of what you need to do as a public relations and informative is to express how much the increase is on Medicaid, how much our health insurance has gone up as it is from last year, and how much our retirement system has gone up from last year, and express that as a percentage that we already are committed to. So people don't go ballistic over a total number, and they see the really another mandate that's being pushed down from the state as far as the raises go.
But can I
Thank you.
just make a comment to the public comment? Josh, didn't you provide those numbers at the last public meeting in Office of Management and Budget? It was, the health insurance was 4%.
Yeah, I think I quoted some ballpark number.
Yeah, those numbers are discussed on and off. I think Ken is probably saying that, making a more formal announcement of that maybe. Any other public comment? Okay, motion to,
Executive
no,
session.
motion to go into executive. Kathy, second. Kitty, All in favor?
What are we going into executive session for?
Lawsuit, legal matters.